Some people rock and some people roll. Some will make you giggle right down to your soul. She'll talk to the world and introduce them to you. And look at me now, I'm all Barbara and you. You gotta take a step inside the shoes of another. Get to know your neighbor, get to know one another. She'll talk to the world and introduce them to you. And look at me now, I'm all Barbara and you.
Good evening and welcome to the Barbara and You Show. I'm Barbara Foster, but I hope you already knew that. I'm very, very excited to have him here. I've been wanted to interview Senator Dean Tran since before he was senator. And I'm so glad we could get together tonight. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you being here and congratulations to you.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight.
And it was so interesting because when I got a hold of you, we booked it for January 2nd and then you realized that was Inauguration Day, so that wouldn't work. But I know how busy you must be, so I appreciate you giving us the time to do an interview tonight.
Absolutely.
And there's lots of things I want to learn about you, but first I want to just express my own opinion about some things about you. One of the things is, I cannot believe how young this man looks for having a 19-year-old daughter and 3 other children and a beautiful wife, of course. But I think of Senator Tran as a man of firsts. I've learned at our chamber meeting last week and through articles I've read that from the time of being a young refugee coming to this country, he's traveled and done many things to get him to this point of being a senator, and I want to know how and why, for one thing. But he was the first Vietnamese American legislator in Massachusetts. He's the first person of color to be elected to office in North Central Mass. He's been with the City Council for 12 years, am I correct?
Correct.
And he's the first Republican in a long time, I believe since 1991, to have a Senate seat in our Commonwealth. And may I call you Dean?
Sure.
Okay, Dean. There's just so much for your life, and you may feel like being on the City Council for so long and having the exposure of campaigning that people know a lot about you. Our show goes into Fitchburg, obviously, Leominster, Sterling, and Lancaster. And I think there's a few people out there that might like to get to know you a little better. So do you mind? Let's talk about Dean Tran, the little boy, and what you remember and how it all began.
Well, sure. Definitely I did a lot of door knocking during my campaign, so a lot of people throughout the district found out about my background, and that's why they showed up at the polls. I wasn't born here. I was born in Vietnam in 1975, and my parents were big business people back in the country. My dad served in the Army for a very, very long time, and of course after the war happened, they did everything they could with regards to their finance to put their family on a wooden boat and to seek freedom. And what happened was that the boat drifted and drifted and drifted for many days in the ocean, and we ended up in a refugee camp in Thailand, where we spent another 2 years there.
2 years in a refugee
Yes.
camp. And would you have been how old at the time? One report said 2 years, and
2
one said
years old.
4. You
2
were
years
2
old.
years old at the time.
I was 4 years old when we
When you left.
emigrated to the United States.
Oh, okay, that's why I read 2 different things. And do you have conscious memories of, I would assume when you're 4 years old, you have conscious memories?
Somewhat, mostly through senses. You know, what's funny is that, interesting, I find, once in a while I can still smell the smell of the fumes from the wooden boat.
Wow.
And then other things such as, you know, I can still hear the sound from the septic trucks in the refugee camp, where they would come and suck out the sewage from the porta potties, things like that. I still remember through senses.
Really, very interesting. Your parents must have been brave, remarkable people.
Oh, they are wonderful people. And without them, my brothers and sisters and I wouldn't be here today.
Mm-hmm. So your mom and your dad are very proud of you, and are they role models? Have they been role models for you?
They have always been my role models. Unfortunately, my father's not with us anymore. He passed away 6 years ago, and I know that he would be very, very proud of me for being elected to the state senate.
And I didn't mention that you are also a graduate of Fitchburg High,
I am. I'm a very proud graduate of Fitchburg High.
and you're a shining example of what a good education people can get
Absolutely.
in our schools. I tell people that all the time. I have 5 kids that graduated from Fitchburg High, and they're all doing very well. But tell me then a little bit about the stages. The 2 years in the refugee camp, how does one get away from that, and how did that happen?
Well, with us, we had to wait and applied through the green card process. And the reason why we spent 2 years in the refugee camp was that we waited for the process to go through and get accepted. Once it was accepted by the United States Customs and going through the process, we were sponsored by an individual who lived in Clinton, Massachusetts. And he was a priest, Father Tony, we called him. And through the green card process, we were sponsored by him and emigrated to the United States and became residents of Clinton, Massachusetts in 1980.
Was your family one of many that he sponsored?
Actually, yes, he sponsored 2 families. He sponsored another family who are relatives of mine, my mother's sister, who is my aunt.
Now, was this by chance that he got your family?
I'm not sure.
How that
I think
came about?
I think it was probably by chance.
I like to think that there's a reason for things, and
Things happen for a reason.
Yeah, they happen for a reason, and that was literally a godsend for your family.
Absolutely.
And I am always envious of people who speak 2 languages, because I'm not smart enough to be able to do that, and too late to learn now. But did you just evolve into English because you lived here and you heard it, or how about the language?
No, when we moved here, we've always had the belief that in order to assimilate, become citizens of the United States, that we had to speak English, and speak English well, and acquire the right education. I do speak Vietnamese, but not that well. If I do speak Vietnamese, most people won't understand me because of a different dialect and things like that. But English has always been my first language.
Okay, so you're not a student of English as a second language, which of course.
We started off as English as a second language, and then of course it became my first after that.
And as a matter of fact, we're going to have the people from Literacy Volunteers. They're going to come on my show in a few weeks, and of course they do a lot of work with that. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters.
Wow.
Yeah, there's 6 of us.
That makes it even more impressive what your family did.
Growing up, we were called the Tran Bunch.
The Tran Bunch. I have a large family, and people say, "Oh, the Tanharas are coming." All of them? Wow. And where do you fit in the birth order?
Second youngest.
Do you recall setting goals, or when it came to your mind that you could do whatever you set your sights on, you could accomplish?
Oh, absolutely. We live in a country where, opportunity exists, and the sky is the limit. As long as you perform, as long as you put hard work into what you want to achieve, you can achieve it. And that's why people call it the American dream. If you want to achieve it, you can achieve it. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't.
Well, and you said your parents were very successful back in Vietnam and were business people. So did they instill this in you?
Oh, absolutely. Everything that I've learned throughout my life really came from my parents. Values, family values, how to treat people with respect, and hard work, all came from my parents.
Did you ever witness the sorrow that they must have felt to leave their homeland? That has to be a very difficult decision.
It was very difficult for them. They left the country, especially my dad, who served a very, very long time in the Southern Vietnamese Army. But they had to leave, of course, because we lost the war, And because my dad served a long time in the Southern Vietnamese Army, there were implications and ramifications for that. But they traveled back to the country a few times.
Oh, they have.
And they loved it. It's quite a change. The country has changed drastically from, many years ago, from a war-torn country to now a very commercialized, industrialized country.
Mm-hmm. And have you been back yourself?
No, not yet. Regrettably, the last time my parents went back, they asked me to travel with them. And because of my work schedule and family, I was unable to attend. I was unable to participate in that trip. Now my father is no longer with us, so it's something that I will always remember my life.
Yeah.
But hopefully one of these days, I'll be able to take my wife and my children back there and visit the country that I was born in.
Mm-hmm. But you'll have less time now that you're a senator than you had before. Now, when you talk about work, what other type of work have you done besides being a politician, if you will?
So I've been in the private sector ever since I graduated from college, and mostly in the technology field. And most recently, I've been a senior manager for a software company based out in Burlington, Massachusetts, managing hundreds of people, mostly personnel, projects, and products, generating hundreds of millions of dollars annually on 3 continents. So that was a great responsibility for me. I have left that behind. That was one of my promises that I made prior to running for state senate. I said I would resign from my position on the city council, as well as leaving the private sector to make this state senate position a full-time, and that's what I've done.
And that's very important. But doing 12 years on the city council, you were still doing that very responsible job at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. It's I've always treated my work, regardless if it's on the city council or in the private sector, as something that high priority on my list. When I'm committed to something, I have to perform and deliver. And that's what I've done on the city council as well as in the private sector. And on the side, of course, I also have a family to raise.
Yes. And I want to come back to your family because I do have a few questions about your family. But tell me when you first got the idea that you would like to be on city council, because you're a busy man, as you said. You had your full-time job, a very responsible job. You're raising a family. You've already proven you can do what you want to do. You're an achiever. But why put another thing on your back as far as going onto city council?
So after I graduated from college, I spent 2 years living and working in Waltham. And my wife and I decided to raise a family. And we decided where would be the best place to raise a family. And of course, I spent most of my life in Fitchburg, went through the school system and graduated from the schools. And I said to my wife, there's no better place to raise a family than the place where I grew up in. So we decided to move to Fitchburg. We bought a house when I was at the age of 21. And I looked around after leaving college, coming back. I saw very little change. I wanted to see more development in terms of residential, to help increase the residential tax base. And I wanted to see things change. I wanted to see more commercial coming into the city. I wanted to see more business development. And I told my wife, the only way that's going to happen is people get involved. And if I want to see things that I want to see change in the city, I need to get involved. And that's the reason why I got involved.
And involved you did. And stayed around for 12 years. And you would still be a city councilor if you hadn't decided, and if the position hadn't opened up for senator.
Yes, that's true.
Now, when you mentioned your family, I presume your wife was enthusiastic about you making this decision to run for Senate?
You know what? Even till today, I don't even know how my wife and my children feel because they are so supportive of everything that I choose to do, because they know that when I make a decision on what I want to do, I would put 100% of myself and dedicate myself to doing it and getting results. Whether it's a job in the private sector or it's a position in the public sector. So they're accustomed to me making those decisions. So when it comes to the results, I don't know if they're excited or not. It's a little strange.
Well, I mean, you basically won something that you wanted to win,
Yeah.
so I'm sure they were happy for you. I was going to save this till the end of our interview, but I'm going to refer to it now because I was very impressed with one of the newspaper articles in the Sentinel that contained a quote from your 14-year-old daughter. And this is so impressive. A 14-year-old girl saying this about her dad. He really persevered because this was something he always dreamed about. Olivia, his daughter, who is a student at Fitchburg High, went on to say, "He is a role model for me because I know I can pursue my dreams if he could pursue his." And that, I compliment you for that because she's obviously a bright girl, and a lot of dads would love to have their daughters say something like that about them.
Oh, my wife and I were very proud when we read that quote, because we knew our children were interviewed by several reporting agencies, but we didn't know what they said. And when we read that quote, we were very proud that she felt that way. And I was very, very proud that that she sees me as a role model, and that I'm an example that she can pursue her dream regardless of what field that she chooses.
And I have a feeling you got that from your parents too.
Mm-hmm.
They instilled that in you, that you can do whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. My dad, when he was alive, he always told his children that don't let any obstacles stand in your way. No wall is too high to climb. Good advice. And you mentioned the campaign and going door to door, and not only yourself but representatives that were working for you. One of your workers came to my door in Sterling, and some people think going door to door is an old-fashioned way of doing things. Obviously you thought it was a good idea. Well, it's always a good idea because it gives me an opportunity to listen, and a lot of people love that. They love politicians who would just stand there and listen to them, and I did that. It's not old-fashioned. It is something that people still want politicians to do. Nowadays, it's all about money. Politicians just use the money, do mailing or what have you, and then once they're elected, the residents don't see them anymore.
And another person that shares your philosophy and did the door-to-door thing is Lou Evangelitis, the sheriff, and when he was a state rep also. But the campaigning itself was so rigorous, and I always think, and I want to come back to the money thing too, because that's interesting, but I always think you have to feel bad for the loser because they put as much effort into it. Now, maybe you don't agree on different things, but when you change your life so much to throw your hat in the ring, so to speak, and then you don't win.
It's very stressful. It's
would have to
stressful mentally on the person, the candidate, him or herself, and it's also very stressful on the family. I never view anybody who lost as a loser, because when a person put him or herself before or participate in any election or and be on the ballot, it's a tremendous effort. It's a commitment, and that's a winning effort. Anytime you have a lot of candidates running for a position, it's a win-win situation for the public.
Very, very true. What have you learned since you won the election? Are there some surprises? Wow, I didn't know I was going to have to do this or whatever.
First of all, it's easier than I thought because I'm coming from a private sector where I have very little sleep. I'm managing people and responsible for livelihoods on 3 continents and things like that. So coming to the State House where on certain days I spent 4 days at the State House last week, and many of those days when I walk around, it seems as though I'm the only person in the building. So I'm not accustomed to that. I'm
So when
accustomed.
you talk about doing business on different continents, you had to meet other people's time zones.
Oh, absolutely.
didn't have time
So
to
if you
sleep.
ask my wife, she'll tell you he doesn't sleep because if there's a problem in Ukraine or a problem in China, I have to be in front of my computer on a conference call, and it may be 2 p.m. here, or it can be 12 p.m. midnight, because 12 p.m. midnight for us is daytime for them.
Right.
So I'm very accustomed to a fast pace, getting things done on a timely manner, deadline. Now I'm transitioning to a full-time position where those things are not there.
Because people work regular hours, fairly regular hours in comparison to what you were used to.
Well, I find that more than 60-something% of state legislators, this is a part-time for them.
And you knew from the beginning if you were going to take this job, it was going to be full-time for you.
It would be full-time for me because I can't, all the bills that I have to look through, the volume of emails that I receive on a daily basis, I actually need a staff to go through my emails because I can't possibly humanly go through all the emails on a daily basis. It has to be a full-time. And for me to really understand and grasp the protocols, the procedures, the parliamentary rules, understand the bills, making sure that the bills that I'll be submitting are up to par and on what the public want me to submit, it has to be a full-time job.
Mm-hmm. And you also, you mentioned you need a staff, and you do have 2 satellite offices as well as being in Boston. So have you accumulated a staff yet?
So right now I have a staff of 4.
Okay.
And I'm going to see how that works out. If I need to add more, I will add more. I have a full-time office right now in Boston, as well as I have a district office in Fitchburg, located at the Armory. And we're looking to open up a couple more satellite offices, one in Gardner, one in Leominster, and one in Clinton, because I like to come to the constituents and talk to them and hear about their concerns rather than having one office and say, hey, you come to me. That doesn't work with me.
Well, and you may have noticed a few people out this way don't like to go into Boston. Is that the biggest drawback, having to drive into Boston?
Oh, absolutely. For example, this morning, I left my home at 7:30, and I didn't get to Boston about 9:45.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's over, I think, about 2 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Which should take about a little over an hour if
Right,
it weren't for all
right.
the traffic. Without getting too political, because I'm just not that kind of an interviewer, but I am interested in hearing your position on immigration, because you're a person who went by the rules. Your family came here, learned the language, walked the walk, lived the talk. What the current situation with immigration, do you mind sharing with us your feelings on that?
Not at all. Just keep in mind, I was born, my family came from a country that doesn't provide freedom. So when we emigrated to the United States, freedom was something that we cherish. My parents have always instilled in myself and my siblings that we respect the country that we're in. We respect the flag that we observe, and we respect the law. So the process that we followed was first the green card process in order to emigrate to the United States. And once we became residents of the United States, we followed the naturalization process to become citizens. You have to apply through that process, wait for the determination, and then take the exam. All of my siblings and I took the exams, and we passed. My father took the exam 4 times in order to become citizen, and my mom took it 5 times in order for her to become a citizen, and all of us became citizens by following the process. So, there was a process for my family and I to become residents and then become citizens of the country, and that's what I believe in.
And you say we still have a good process and it should be followed.
We have a great process. We just have to promote the process. Our government just have to not only promote but enforce the process, making sure that we have good people who want to become citizens, give them the affordability and the path to become citizens.
Going back to your work on city council, what are some of the things you feel that you were instrumental in enacting and that some of the things you're most proud of?
I
And
think
obviously the city is proud of it or you wouldn't have won the election, but
I would say two things. I've always put children ahead of everything when I was serving on the city council. I made sure that every time there is a funding measure that came before the city council to provide, whether it's protection to the children or school funding for the children, I've always voted in favor of that. The second would be constituent service. I've always responded to my emails, to my texts, to my phone calls personally, and try to do it on a timely manner because I'm in a service field as a public servant, and I take that very, very highly in terms of providing the service to the people. And those are the two things that I'm most proud of.
Mm-hmm. And the transition to being a senator and being in Boston, where the delegation out this way doesn't have the strongest voice in Boston. Do you feel that it's going to be an uphill battle? Do you think you'll have a lot of cooperation between parties and between areas? What are you thinking the future is going to be like?
I have a plan in place for that already because I know all the delegations to the west of 495 don't have that much clout. And one of the things that I've been doing in the past several weeks is that building friendships, relationships, and coalition with my colleagues to the west of 495, as well as my delegation and the delegations of my colleagues. So one of my goals is to create that coalition so that way we can work together and make sure that we bring more infrastructure projects and more funding to the west of 495 because, like I said at the chambers, we've been neglected for a long time. And as long as I'm in the state senate, I'm going to do my best to make sure that we're not neglected any further.
I'm smiling because I can see some of them scratching their heads and saying, oh, here comes Tran again. What does he want now? But you're none of it frightens you, does it?
No.
I can see that.
I love working with people. I love building relationships. And the one thing that I love the most, getting results. And I've done that in the private sector. I've done that as a city council. And I'm looking forward to do that as a state senator.
Now, as you knocked on doors and went and talked to people, what were some of the stronger, what did you hear more often? Did you hear complaints or say, do this, do that?
You know, very interesting because towards the latter part of my campaigning and door knocking, I've done so much door knocking, it's just unbelievable. But towards the latter end, every time I come up to the door, they treated me as if I'm a celebrity. People run into the door and they're holding their head and like they couldn't believe I'm at the door. Oh my God, Mr. Tran, you're here at my door. Because of social media, it's incredible because the word spread that I'm door knocking, I'm all over the place. I actually door knock in all 11 communities in this district within 3 months of campaigning. So that was great reception that I received. The complaints that I mostly received, pretty much twofolds. One was people are not happy with the politicians they have in Beacon Hill. Believe me, they're not happy. Another, taxes and fees. That's what they're not happy about as well. And
you will do what you can to change those,
well,
work in that direction.
I made my messages very clear through my robocalls, through my door knocking, through my literature, and I've never said anything that I would not be able to deliver. And if people go back and and refresh some of the messages that I said to them, or through recording, through my mailing. They will see that from now till end of this year, there will be something done to each of those messages.
Do you remember how you felt on election night when you found out you won?
Relieved, very tired, and can't wait to get some sleep.
And you weren't surprised?
I wasn't surprised. I was at the headquarters waiting for the numbers, the results to come in, and Councillor Shalafu Zephyr gave me a call, and she congratulated me, and very graciously, and I thank her for her service in Leominster as well as for her candidacy, and then we just took the victory from there. I wasn't surprised because I did a lot of door knocking. I spoke to people on a personal basis. I listened to them, and I knew they would take those sentiments to the polls.
And you said your dad taught you hard work pays off.
He did,
And it did.
did.
Well, thank you so much. The time has flown by, but I'm so glad you were able to join us this evening. And we congratulate you and wish you continued success in all of your endeavors.
Thank you very much.